Hey everybody, we are now live for Photoshop Techniques with Nigel French. How you doing, Nigel?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. And Nigel, did you want to talk about what we're going over today with Photoshop Techniques?
Well, I have a series of techniques. I think what they have in common really is that they're all relatively simple and relatively quick, mainly photographic, but a few graphic and text techniques as well. Excellent. And each one should be short and sweet. So if you don't like one, don't worry. It won't be long before we move on to the next one.
Excellent. And yeah, welcome everybody. Let us know where you're watching from. We've got Dan from the San Francisco Bay Area. Good to see you here, Dan. John from Yakima, Washington. He also says, I'm brand new to all this, but I'm catching on slowly. We got someone from Poland.
All right.
From UK. Florida, Chicago, Iraq, Oklahoma City. Let's see, it's hard to catch up. Popping in here. Kansas City, where is it? Albany, close to where I'm from. And someone from Rochester too. Rob from UK.
All right.
Lots of people coming in now. It's hard to find where the last, there it is. Okay, Ecuador. I think that's Iran, Georgia, Rhode Island, Texas, Citrus County, Denmark. Oh, we got Andrea, happy teach. Love Nigel, he is the best. Says.
Hey, Andrea.
We got Georgianne Uharty from Oregon, nice. Lake Washington, Venezuela, nice. Richard's here from Chicago. Good to see you here, Richard. Someone from Hollywood. Andrea says she's in Maryland, Calgary. So just a reminder for those who come up as Facebook user. Let me just remind you to please give StreamYard permission to show your name and profile pic so that I'll be able to credit you when you comment or ask questions. You see that at the top, or if you scroll down the description near the bottom, StreamYard.com/Facebook. Give that a click, give permissions, jump on that. Thank you. And let's see, Melanie from downstairs.
She's literally downstairs.
And Gary from Joanna Schindler's basement.
Hi, Gary.
Alabama. Some more from the UK, Central Michigan, Haiti. Wow. And we got my best friend.
Hey, Dafir, how you doing?
Romania, Brazil. Yep. Great. Some more coming in here. Someone's from Boston. My friend Michael from Tucson, I think Arizona, right? Nice. All right, well, lots to go over. So, Nigel, do you want to introduce yourself and then take it?
Yes, my name is Nigel French, and I obviously I'm a Photoshop user. I'm also a InDesign and Illustrator user. I've been doing graphic design now for a number of years, and I have a number of courses on LinkedIn Learning. I speak at Adobe Max and the Creative Pro conferences. And the rest of the time, I do freelance graphic design from home, which is the UK. I'm based in the south of England, not too far from Brighton.
Great. Excellent. So shall I share your screen?
Yes, let's do this.
Okay. Switch the view. Great. And I'll move you up to the top. Okay, great. So I see you're in Photoshop. Beautiful. Where is this?
This is a place called Cookmere Haven. It's a very famous location, very popular in movies. And if you've seen the movie Atonement, it's in one of the final scenes of that. But it's been used in lots of others as well. I'm going to use it just to talk for a much more pedestrian use than theirs, just to talk about using the crop tool. Now, I know the crop tool is one of the most basic things that we can use, but there are some features to it that may be overlooked.
Great.
And
I was going to say, before we begin, Pierre had said no sound. If anybody else is having sound problems, let us know. But I think other people are hearing us just fine. Let us know. Maybe MK, let me know. Sounds fine. But better now. Okay. Okay, great. So maybe I'll go into full screen view. Let you do your thing. Or did you want to talk about it? Yeah. Nigel.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good. So the crop tool, you can really influence a picture with a good crop. And if you come up to the tool options bar, you can crop to standard ratios. If you wanted to go for Instagram, for example, 4:5. Handy shortcut. If you have a vertical crop, but you actually want a 5:4 horizontal, you can press the X key to toggle between those two.
Excellent.
You can also make your own crop ratios. And when you're performing a crop, you have the option of an overlay. Currently, I've got I've just got a grid, but if I press my O key, I cycle through the different overlay options, which are all right here. And for the most part, I suppose like most photographers, I will use rule of thirds, but there may be occasion when one or other of these overlays is more suitable.
Excellent.
And this one here is interesting. This is the golden spiral. So if I wanted to maybe crop in the ratio of a golden spiral, which is 1 to 1.6, I could put that in as my ratio up there. And I got it the wrong way around, so I can switch it. And then I'll just enlarge it, and then I can position this at the focal point of my image. I also have the option of changing the opacity on my crop shield. So if I get that to 100%, then that completely blacks out the area that I'm about to crop. And when I commit to the crop, something important is going to happen, and the result that you get will depend upon whether or not you are deleting the cropped pixels or not. If you're absolutely convinced you're never going to need the stuff that you're cropping out, then go ahead and delete them. But if there's any chance you might change your mind, leave this unchecked. And if it is unchecked, then you can always just adjust the crop using the move tool. I'll show you that in just a minute. Just want to mention that I can flip the spiral here in this particular overlay by pressing Shift O. So I can
Great.
move that around the image according to what the content of my image is. So if I commit to that, I didn't delete the cropped pixels. I can now come and use my move tool, and I can move my image around within that cropped aspect ratio.
I think already this is a lot of stuff that people don't know. So pretty cool.
Okay, good.
And real quick, Nigel,
on.
if you want to move your webcam up just a little bit, it's kind of cropping the top of your head. So
okay,
shifted. Yeah. Okay, good. Yep, there we go.
How's that?
Looks great.
All right. This next few images is just to make the point that sometimes things work better in black and white, and this, I think, is a case in point. So I'm going to convert this to black and white. Of course, there are numerous ways we can do this. I think perhaps the easiest is to apply a black and white adjustment layer. So your adjustment layers are bottom center on your layers panel. They're elsewhere as well, but that's where I prefer to access them from. And I'll choose black and white. So that gives me an adjustment layer above my background layer. I can turn that on and off, so it's completely non-destructive.
Nice.
But the point I want to make here is that you can take advantage, start out by checking out the presets. And if I switch to high contrast red, already that's quite dramatically changed the image. So experiment with those presets. And you can also mix your own grayscale depending on the colors that are in the original. So obviously there's quite a lot of green and yellow in this. So if I affect the green and yellow sliders, then that's going to change the image. And I can use this tool. It's called the, well, I call it the targeted adjustment tool. So if I click on that and then move over the area of the image that I want to affect, and then I'll drag that to the right, and you can see that my yellow slider is moving up, but more importantly, my image is lightening in that bottom left corner, or wherever the yellows happen to be.
Nice.
Just to sort of reinforce that point, I'll do the same thing here. Black and white adjustment layer. So you can see from my image thumbnail, I have red, yellow, and blue spades. And look how I can affect the grayscale that is mixed by working on those particular sliders.
It's very sensitive, right?
It can be, yeah. Now, of course, if you have black and white, you don't have to have the whole image black and white. This is a perhaps overused technique, but it is fun nonetheless. So I'm going to, before I convert this to black and white, I'm going to come to the select menu and choose select subject. It'll take a moment just to think about that. And then I'm going to deliberately get this wrong. I'll come and choose black and white while I have this active selection. And what it's given me there is the opposite of what I wanted, but this happens all the time and it's very, very easy to fix. You can see I've added a layer mask defined by that selection, and I can get to that layer mask by holding down Option or Alt and clicking on it. And if it's the opposite of what you want, you can just press Command or Control I to invert that.
Great.
And I can continue to work on this layer mask. If I don't want the stalk to be included, then I can tap B to access my brush tool. And in this case, I would need to be painting in white, which is currently my foreground color, so I don't need to change anything there. My right bracket to go to a bigger brush, and then I can just paint over that. But first of all, let me just make my opacity 100%. And you can see how that is affecting the mask. And I can also just paint on the mask itself.
Great.
One more on the black and white adjustment layer.
Great.
And the point here is that you can use black and white to affect the color. So I've chosen black and white, but if I change the blending mode of the adjustment layer to luminosity, nothing has now changed. It's exactly as it was. But what we have are our color sliders. So if I want a more dramatic sky, I can just get my blue slider and move that to the left.
That's nice.
So I'm using black and white to affect color. All right. The point I want to make with this image is keep it simple. I just want to simplify this. And I like the symmetry of the clouds either side of the dead tree, but I want to remove some of the smaller clouds. And this is a very easy job for content-aware fill. I'll come and get my lasso tool, and I could probably do them both in one go, but I'll be cautious and just do one at a time. I'll make a selection and then come and choose content-aware fill. And then what we have indicated by the green overlay is the area that it is sampling from. Now, if it has got it wrong, and sometimes it does, I can subtract parts to not be included, to not be, so they can't be sampled. Here's a preview of what I'm going to get, and it's such an easy job for the tool that it has no problem at all. I'll just do that once again. I'll circle the other cloud. I'll need to return to my background layer because that is where the content is. Content-aware fill. And it's gone. And I have a simpler and I think slightly better composition.
Yeah.
There's the before and there's the after.
Better focused.
Now with this one, and this is something that I do very commonly. I want to use a gradient layer mask to adjust the exposure of the sky and add some more drama to the sky. So this is a problem that happens a lot with landscape photography. If you have enough light to capture the foreground, then you're possibly overexposing the sky. So I'm going to add another adjustment. There are several that I could use, but I'm going to use curves. And I'll say just a few words about curves. Now this is an RGB image. RGB is an additive color model. So with the curve, if I move it up, I'm adding light and my image is getting lighter. And if I move it down, I'm removing light and it's getting darker. So the opposite is true if it's a CMYK image. If you move it up, you are adding more ink. And if you move it down, you're removing ink. I'm just going to drag that curve back up to the top of the grid to put it back to how it was. And what I want to do now is grabbing my targeted adjustment tool, just like we saw in the black and white adjustment layer, moving over the portion of the image that I want to affect, and I'll click and drag down in this case. Now, as I do this, I'm ignoring what's happening to the foreground. I realize that that's getting too dark. I'm just looking at the sky. And I should also say that when I demo things like this, I do have a tendency to perhaps overdo it a little bit because I'm keen for you to see the effect. So if you are a landscape photographer looking at this and thinking, oh, he's a little bit heavy-handed there, then that's because, yeah, I probably am a little bit heavy-handed for demo purposes. But what I'm going to do now is get my gradient tool. And I want to be painting with black as my foreground color. Right now, white is my foreground color. So I'm just going to press the X key to toggle my foreground background color. Up at the top here, I want to be using a basic gradient. It's foreground, in this case black, to transparent, a linear gradient. And all I'm going to do is drag up from the bottom.
Nice.
I might need to do it a few times. And this is the benefit of using a foreground to transparent gradient, because you can build it up in multiple steps. So we have this, the gradient layer mask. Where it is black, it's preventing the adjustment layer from reaching the image. And where it's white, the adjustment is reaching the image, and where it's gray, it's partially reaching the image. And because we have a smooth transition, we don't see a line. Now, there is a very useful, much newer tool in Photoshop, Select Sky, which works great a lot of the time. But sometimes if you were to use it in this situation, there is the possibility that if you adjust just your sky selection, you end up seeing a line or a seam where the adjustment has been made, but you're not going to get that with the gradient layer mask.
Yeah, this looks nice. And
so just a word about
and Nigel, I was like, did you want to take a question, which was about a previous thing that you did?
Yes, just give me 1 sec. I'll just finish up this point and then I'll take the question.
Sure.
So this layer mask here, and layer masks in general, Option or Alt, click on it, you see the mask. Shift, click on it, and you disable the mask. So that's how it was with just the curve and no gradient layer mask. And that's how the image began. Yes, questions?
Very nice. And then just as a general question from me, so just let me answer that. Yes, this will be available to view later. The lives that are in the groups will be pin posted to the top, and this will be available on my YouTube, which is Digital Art Drew at YouTube. And Dan asks, why content aware fill instead of the spot healing brush when you remove those clouds?
The spot healing brush would have worked as well. I think they were probably just a little bit too big for the spot healing brush. I think the key is in the name. The spot healing brush works best when the blemishes really are just spots, dust spots typically. Anything bigger than that, and while it will work, there is the possibility that you could introduce some brush strokes, or it might not look, the result might not be as good. But yeah, it would work.
And Teresa Jackson's here. She says, hello, Nigel and Andrew.
Hi, Teresa.
Good to see her here. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, I'm just going to plow on through. I have a few rapid fire text tips. If we want to use what's called a clipping mask, I want my sky in the shape of my letters. Take a look at my layers panel. I have my type on top of my sky. I'm just going to change the order, put the sky on top of the type, hold down my Option or Alt key, and click on the line between the two. That makes a clipping mask.
Nice.
If I want to make a knockout so that we see through the type to the image below. So I've got my image, a white rectangle, and the type. On the type layer, I'll double click to the right of the layer name so that I come to my blending options, and I'll choose knockout shallow. I also will need to get my advanced blending and then dial that all the way down to 0, so that now I can move that group around and we're going to see through it. What if we want to look? Here's another one where I'm using that gradient layer mask trick that you just saw. So that's how it looked before, and that's with the gradient layer mask. But the point I want to make here is how we can add some text. Well, I've already added the text, but how we can add some texture to the text. Let's imagine this is a book cover or a movie poster. On a separate layer, I have some texture. I'm going to turn off all the other layers. Option or Alt and click on the eyeball so that we're seeing just that layer. And then I'll come to the channels panel and Command click on the RGB channel. That's going to load the gray values of that channel. So that's now an active selection. Return to my layers panel, turn that off, turn the layers back on, target the text layer, and then come and convert that selection into a layer mask.
Nice.
So before we were just using a pretty much silhouette style layer mask, but here we have lots of gray values used as a layer mask. Now, if that's not quite what I want, and it is not quite what I want at the moment, I can click on it and I can adjust its contrast. So I'm going to do that by coming to my static adjustments up here, because you can't apply an adjustment layer to a layer mask. Just can't be done. I'll choose levels. So I've got my black point, on my right, my white point, on my left, my black point. I'm just going to drag that over my white point, drag that to the left. In addition, you see that these masks, and this is not just true with text, but with any layer mask, you have a chain that connects the mask to the layer. So when the chain is on, if you move one, the other bit goes with it. But in this case, I want to break the chain so that I can just move that mask around within the type shape.
Nice.
Okay, and I'm going to go one step further with this. And I'm going to come to my image layer and I'll come and choose select sky, the aforementioned select sky. So that makes a nice selection of the sky, which I'm now going to inverse so that I have everything but the sky selected. And then I'll copy that selection to a new layer. New layer via copy or keyboard shortcut. Command J. And then I'm going to move that up above the type so that we get the type just coming up behind the mountains. All right, that's it for the type section. Now I'm going to move on to, I've got two images here, which I'm...
And did you take that photo that you used for
yes,
that?
Yeah, they're all my images.
Look like Nevada or something.
It is. It's on the border of Death Valley National Park. That road leads to Death Valley. And
then you have a comment from Eugene, I think how you say his name, Eugene Coman. Hi, Nigel. I'm happy to watch your courses. Great.
Yeah, what I'm going to do here is this and the next image, I'm just going to use some presets. And the point being that don't feel like you're cheating for using presets. The preset that I want to use here is actually part of the camera raw dialog. So I'm first going to convert this to a smart object. And you convert an image to a smart object, right click and just choose convert. So now it's a smart object. I can apply filters to it. in a way that is non-destructive. Filter, camera raw. And those of you familiar with Lightroom, this will all be very familiar to you. You've got all the same options here in camera raw. All I'm going to do here is just come to the presets. There are some really good presets in the latest versions of Camera Raw and Lightroom. And the one that I want to use is this one, Cinematic.
And Nigel, just
Yes.
to go over this for the viewers, for the members, how can they access the presets in Camera Raw again?
Okay, so I've already applied that. Now, because this is a smart filter, I can revisit the filter just by double clicking on it. Here we are, we're back in Camera Raw. And the presets are, they're over on this right-hand panel.
Right. Yep.
And it's those two overlapping circles. And all of these on down are presets that come with Camera Raw, and you have the same presets in Lightroom as well. And you can just trial them out by literally just rolling your mouse over them.
Nice, very nice. And Jennings just has a request. He's wondering if you could just move your mic a little bit closer. He says he's hard of hearing. The echo is making it harder for him to understand. Is that possible? Not sure.
My mic is actually in my earbud, so I can't move it any closer, but I will try and speak more clearly.
I think it sounds fine, but so.
Okay.
Yep. Nice.
Okay, here I am going to apply a gradient map, and I'm using a gradient map here, A, because I really like how it looks, and B, because Adobe changed something recently that makes the gradient map presets harder to find. So that's the second point that I want to make with this. A gradient map is another adjustment layer. So we've already seen black and white, and we've seen curves and levels. Down here we have gradient map. And this will map in what's happening here. I mean, what my result at the moment is a bit random, but it's mapping my shadows to white and my highlights to black. So effectively I have a negative. I'll click on the gradient ramp to bring up the gradient editor, and I can now change those colors. I can add colors, and the reason I'm here is I can take advantage of all of these presets.
Nice.
Except the preset that I was really interested in was what's now considered a legacy gradient. So if you're working with the current version of Photoshop and you do not see this, you will need first to come to the gradients panel, and on the panel menu, choose legacy gradients. Thereafter, they will appear here.
Great.
So in the legacy gradients are some really good gradient maps called photographic toning. And the one that I would like to use is, well, I'll use that one.
Nice.
And if it's a bit too much, you know, maybe it is a bit too much, we can always just dial it down with the opacity slider.
Nice.
Okay, what I'm going to do with this one is create an abstraction using a much forgotten, rather unloved tool called the single column marquee tool. which doesn't really have much of a purpose anymore. It used to be used in web design.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I've ever used.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever used that one.
Well, now you'll have the chance.
That's right.
So what I'm going to do, so I'm using this image because it has a very nice color palette. So choose an image that has a nice color palette. And then I'm just going to click there to make a single pixel wide column selection. And I'm going to copy that to a new layer. And you'll remember that the keyboard shortcut for that is Command J. Then I'm going to put a transformation rectangle around that, free transform or Command T. And then I'm just going to stretch it out like that. Now,
Wow.
I could go further, but I'm just going to leave it there. I think that's quite.
Now, if you blurred that a little bit, it would be a Brian Eno CD cover, right?
There you go. Brian, if you're watching this, my details are in the chat.
So commission.
All right, now I've got two examples of fixing perspective distortion, the kind of thing that happens all the time when you're photographing buildings because you're tilting your camera lens. These, while there are other ways of doing it, the way I prefer to do it, which I find by far the easiest way, is again to use Camera Raw. And as I did before, when you use Camera Raw, first of all, convert your layer to a smart object. And in Camera Raw, in Lightroom, by the way, it's called Upright. Here I go to Geometry, where it's called Upright here as well. It's exactly the same thing. And we have these presets. Basically, you try them out and you see which one you like best. And in this case, I want full. And you can see that that's now straightened out my horizontals and my verticals. If I turn it off, it looks like that. And that's with the full upright adjustment. Of course, I am going to lose some of the image on the sides, but that is the price we pay. And I'd now get my crop tool and maybe we'll crop to a 4:5 aspect ratio.
Nice. I forgot the exact title for it, but I know in Lightroom it has that great feature that when you do something like this, it says like crop unused pixels or something, where it will go in and crop for you. I like that feature.
Yes. And there's also an option where you can have content aware, try and fill in the missing pixels, which would work in some instances, but not in that one.
Sure.
All right, so here's another example. This one, we're going to have to be a lot more aggressive with the upright. Once again, I'll convert to a smart object. And
just wanted to let people know, as we're at the stage, that yes, someone else asked. So yes, this will be recorded and it will be posted at the top of the groups and on my Digital Art Drew YouTube channel. Thank you. Sorry, Nigel.
No worries. So with this, none of the standard options will work. I need to use a guided upright where you basically get to draw what you think the horizontals and verticals should be. You can have up to 4 lines.
Nice.
And it gets worse before it gets better. And we get a result like that. Now, if it doesn't quite work, a small adjustment to these lines will have a big effect. But what I can do here is, it's looking a little bit condensed. I can get the aspect slider and just drag that to the left.
Hmm.
And then, of course, once again, I would need to crop out the transparent areas. So we'd end up with a smaller image, but one that is not distorted.
Nice.
Okay, let's imagine that you have a picture of an iconic building and you want to give it a pop art treatment. You want to have a sort of a silk screen like effect where you can print it in just a handful of colors. That's what I want to do with St. Paul's Cathedral. And I'm going to start out by making a selection of the subject. So select subject. And then I'll come to my quick selection tool. I just need to fix that up a little bit. So I'll just
choose the bottom part.
Do that. And now, thankfully, for what I'm doing here, I don't need a terribly accurate selection, so that's good enough. I'm now going to make that selection into a layer mask so that we have transparency where we once had sky. And let's create a solid color fill beneath that. Now I'll come back to my image layer and I want to apply a threshold command to it. Now threshold is going to make everything that is to the left of this slider white and everything to the right black. So 128 is our midpoint. I might want to adjust this a little bit, but before I do so, I'm going to make a few other changes to the image that will get us a much better result than the one we're currently getting. First of all, this adjustment threshold is affecting, and this is how adjustment layers behave, it's affecting everything down to the bottom of the layer stack. I only want it to affect the image layer. So I'm going to make that into a clipping mask. We saw a clipping mask with the first type example. So that's saying this adjustment only affects the layer below. Secondly, I want to apply a filter to my image. So I'm going to convert it to a smart object. And then come and apply a sharpening filter. Now, sharpening is something that photographers do all the time, and they will be horrified at the amount of sharpening that I'm about to apply here, because this is a crazy amount of sharpening. If it went any further than 500, I would go as far as it went. So basically, this is not a realistic amount of sharpening for photographic purposes, but it works in this kind of context. And you can see how by applying that sharpening filter, we are introducing a whole lot more edges, and there's now way more detail. But it's still not quite right. I now, and this is one of my favorite tricks, I'm going to create a new empty layer above my image layer, which I will use as a dodge and burn layer. Dodge to make it brighter, burn to make it darker. I'll hold down my Option or Alt key and click on Create New Layer. That gives me options. I want the overlay blend mode. When you choose the overlay blend mode, you have the option to fill it with overlay neutral color, which I'm going to do. So you see there, I've got that gray layer. It's currently not doing anything because it's overlay neutral. But I can paint on that layer in white and in black. It's mainly going to be white. So I'll choose my brush tool. Make sure I've got a nice size for my brush. And I'm going to tap 3, which will take my opacity down to 30%. Of course, you'll need to vary this according to the image. But now, when I paint over that, we are bringing back detail
that's fun.
Looked like it was gone for good.
Nice.
And if certain areas were too light, which they're not really in this image, then I would just tap X to toggle foreground background color so that I'm now painting in black. Now, just to finish this up, I want a color applied to the shape of the building. I'm going to use another color fill layer. Solid color. And let's go with something like that. Now it's not working at the moment because of its order in the layer stack. It is below the threshold adjustment. If I move it above,
great,
we now have the color that we want, and I will now need to change the blending mode of that to multiply.
Cool.
So try that at home with your favorite building.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of the using of the dodge and burn instead of always for just like portraits and things, to use it in a creative way like that too. Bring out detail.
How are we doing time-wise? Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Dodging and burning.
You got like 15 minutes, doing great. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a couple of examples here that
this looks like a painting almost, right?
I would consider diamonds in the rough. So this is the unedited version. In fact, let me just come back and open that up. It's a raw image. So when I double click on it, I go to the camera raw environment. And I'm going to make a few changes to this. First of all, I'll begin with a crop. I might try and auto straighten just by double clicking on the straighten tool, which it does, but not quite enough. So I'll straighten it up a little bit more. And I'll change the color profile. And you see that has a bit of an effect as well.
Landscape.
And basically what I'm going to do here is use some masks. So we have masking in Camera Raw and in Lightroom, and it's just amazing what you can do with it. I'll start out by having a mask of the sky, and I'll add some drama to the sky. So I'm decreasing the exposure and taking down the blacks. Now I've got the sky mask. I'm going to right click on that and choose duplicate and invert. So we now have a mask of everything else.
That's a smart way of doing it. Nice and fast.
The only problem here is that the sheep on the rock, and I only know this because I tried it earlier, is going to get a little bit too much attention, I think, from what I'm about to do next. So I'll go ahead and just increase the exposure a little bit and increase the texture and increase the clarity. And I'm going to modify this second mask that I made, subtract from it. I'm going to subtract from it with a brush. I'll just, that didn't work too well, did it? Mask inverted. Sorry, I was doing it from the wrong one. Subtract from mask inverted with a brush. I'll just take her out of that. And I'm going to add a third mask now. And this one will be a radial. Just going to draw a shape, something like that. And then I'll increase the exposure on that a little bit. Let's come to the overall exposure. Nice, right now. Okay, now I could go further, but I'm going to open this up. I'm going to now in Photoshop and show you one other thing that I like to do with images like this. You commented that it looks like a painting, and that was my thought when I saw it. And I thought, well, let's really make it look even more like a painting.
It would make a nice. I was gonna say it'd make a nice book cover or a movie poster, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
So I'm going to convert it to a smart object again, and then I'm going to use an effect that's referred to as the Orton effect, and there are different ways of doing it. This is how I like to do it. It's basically going to give a bit of a warm glow to the image. We apply a blur, a Gaussian blur in my case. How much you apply, well, that's up to you, but general rule of thumb that I read was that it should be as many megapixels as you have in your camera. So I have a 50 megapixel camera, so I'm applying a 50 pixel radius Gaussian blur. Now, when you apply filters, when you apply smart filters, they come with this little button here where you can adjust the blending of the filter. If I double click on that, I can dial down the opacity of the filter. I can also change its blending mode. I'm going to go to soft light and about 50%. So the effect is that.
Cool.
Let me come to this one next. I've seen this referred to as the Pep Ventosa effect, named after a photographer of the same name, who I don't know. And I don't know if this is how he does it. It's just my speculation on how he's achieving the effect that he does, which is really great. Much more elaborate than my attempts at it. But it's something like this. So you basically take multiple frames of your subject. So I've got this tree taken from different angles. And then you blend them together. And the misalignment is to be embraced, and you get this interesting, when it works, you get this interesting layering effect. Often it doesn't work. Obviously it did work with this one, otherwise I wouldn't be showing you, but often it doesn't work. So first of all, I need to roughly align them. I'm going to choose the top one, and I'll temporarily change its blending mode to difference. And then I'll come and choose the layer beneath it, and I'll get my move tool. And all I'm doing here is I'm just lining up the trunk of the tree as best I can. And then I'll come and select the next one, line up the trunk of the tree. All right. Now I'll come and set that back to normal. In fact, what I want to do is select them all and then change the blending mode to soft light and take the opacity down to about 50%. Add a solid color fill layer of white beneath. And when I do that, all we see is white. That's because of the blending mode that we have applied. When you combine soft light with white, the white wins. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to select these 4 images that make up the composition and press Command or Control G to put them into a group. Now, when you work with a layer group, as well as all of these blending modes, we have an additional blending mode, pass through, which is the default behavior, but that's not what we want in this case. If I change it to normal, then what's happening is the blending using soft light is happening within the group, but then it stops. And then the result then passes down to the color layer below. And that's the kind of effect that we get.
Nice.
Time for one more?
Sure. It's great.
Because one more is all I've got. So
perfect timing.
Yeah.
Are you out? Are you in the country of the UK, in England?
Yeah, I'm just outside a village called Barkham.
Nice.
And yeah, it's quite countrified.
Some great opportunities from great photos.
Yeah. A lot of these photos are taken nearby.
Excellent.
So the color on this looks strange because it's taken with an infrared converted camera, and with an infrared shot, you can get a lot more contrast than you might be able to get with a color image converted to black and white. So even though it looks strange to begin with, the first thing I'm going to do is just take down the saturation, so it's now black and white. And because I don't seem to be able to take a picture that isn't crooked, I'm going to come to the crop tool and double click on that to straighten the image. And what I want here is a very, very high contrast result. So I'll get my blacks and move them to the left. I'll come and make a mask of the sky. Before I work on that mask, which you can see is also including the tree, I am going to subtract from that the subject.
Nice.
And then I'll bring that down till it's pretty much solid black. Now there might be some other things that I need to do to the whole thing. But that is essentially it. A bit of a diamond in the rough, because it started out not looking especially promising, but with just a few moves,
Nice.
we get a striking image from it. Do we have any questions?
We got some nice comments. So someone says, Facebook user, this has been a very detailed and interesting presentation of Photoshop features. Thank you very much for the thoughtful tutorials.
You're very welcome.
Someone else says, thanks a million. Gives you the full title, Photoshop Techniques with Nigel French. And then once again, we have another, will this be recorded? Yes, the digital art Drew on YouTube and at the top of the groups. And Eugene was saying that he wanted to see that last technique. So that was great.
Cool.
Admired your Instagram pics for a long time. And Cindy asked, what was the name of the photographer you mentioned for the layered effect?
Pep Ventosa. You can follow him on Instagram.
Okay.
I believe he's based in San Francisco.
And did you want to talk about your book? So you have a new book out.
Oh, look, I have one right here. I've just written this book with Mike Rankin, my friend Mike Rankin, the Photoshop Visual Quickstart Guide. It's if you are a relatively new Photoshop user, or if you're just someone that wants a handy reference on how to do basic Photoshop tasks, then
nice.
This could be the book for you. Some of the examples that I've shown make an appearance in the book.
Yeah, beautiful. I've used those books for a while, those guides. So thank you.
It's a very standard formula. Here's a task. Here are the steps to achieve what you want to achieve. And it also has a video content with it as well. I should mention there's a few hours worth of video from myself and Mike that support the content in the book, because obviously we were limited to the number of pages that we could fill. And as I'm sure you all know, there's just so much to say about Photoshop.
Great. Yeah, and I'll be posting that with the link to the recordings. So, and yeah, it was great. Thank you, Nigel. And you can find Nigel also on his website, nigelfrench.com, as well as Instagram, Nigel French Photo. And do consider subscribing for more digital art, Photoshop, and photography focused live streams and tutorials on my YouTube, Digital Art Drew. That's youtube.com, Digital Art Drew. Thank you. If you haven't already, please join the Photoshop and Lightroom group, facebook.com/groups/Photoshop Lightroom group. And I've got some nice comments coming in now. So, first, as Andrea said, another amazing tutorial by the most amazing Nigel
Thanks,
French.
Andrea.
And then Defer, I'm not sure that's how you say it, but I love all Nigel's tricks.
Great. Thanks. That's great. Thank you.
Gail says, great, understandable presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Facebook user, thank you. Look forward to rewatching. Andrea, thank you. It has been great. We'll be trying some of the techniques on the photos later this evening.
Good luck.
Thank you. Very helpful. Great. Thank you. I definitely will watch again. And I think this might be thank you. And you're saying?
It's nice. I'm seeing names of people that I know. It's great.
Oh, good. Great details. Thank you, follower on Egypt.
Thank you.
Let's see. Nigel is the man, says Andrea. Thanks so much.
The check is in the mail, Andrea.
Sorry. Teresa
Thanks,
says,
Teresa.
nice job, Nigel. Thank you for sharing your expertise.
So you had Teresa on?
Yeah, I've had her on before.
Yeah.
We'll reach out to her again to schedule. I was planning on doing that.
Thanks,
some other
Cindy.
great people from the Adobe Community Experts group. So, yep. And let's see. Thank you. Thank you. Learned so much. Great. Very informative. Principally a Lightroom user, so this has been great. Great info. I will be getting the book. Yep. Please use that link that I post in the groups and on YouTube. And book is ordered. Yes. And people are still asking. Yes, this video is available for watching later. Digital Art Drew, YouTube. You can watch that as well as various other live presentations I've had through the groups. Great presentation. Happy New Year. Great information. Thanks from Ireland. Great class. Very informative. Yep. So very appreciative everyone is, as am I.
Cool.
So thank you so much, Nigel.
Well, thank you all for watching. It's really nice to be able to do this.
Yeah. Oh. And have you back again this year. So. Great class as Richard as well. So
thanks, Richard.
So yeah, thanks everyone for being here. And if you are just jumping in now, yes, it's recorded, and you can find that at the Digital Art Drew YouTube channel, as well as at the top of the featured posts in the groups, Photoshop and Lightroom group, Digital Art and AI Art group. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Nigel. It was really great.
Yes. You're very welcome. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.